Okay, so now we're live and recording. And I would like to introduce to you today, and we will go in order along the bottom of our screen here, or who I can see. So the first person that we have here is Tracy, and she is the president of Luminous Books. Next to her, you'll see Sarah Goodman, who is an editor at St. Martin's Press. And then Lisa Cheng is an editor at Running Press Kids. And Joy, right in the middle over here, is a young adult librarian at our Leawood Library, who's joining us from their YAC as well. And then Brian Ketcher, who is the author of Playing with Matches, Almost Perfect, and his newest book is Everyone Dies in the End. Thank you guys so much for coming to join us today. And if you'd like to go in order, starting with Tracy, can you tell us a little bit about what you do with your publisher? Or Tracy could have just left the chat.
No, I'm here. I just can't see anyone. I can only hear you right now. I seem to be frozen or something, so I was checking.
Well, we can hear you just fine.
Well, hold on. Come back to me, maybe. I'm sort of sorting something. Oh, there we go. Here I am. But I can't see anyone else.
That's so weird. If you want to...
That's okay. I'll just tell you. So.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about... Oh, I think she's...
Go ahead.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Okay, so I'll just start talking. So I am Tracy Richardson. I am president of Luminous Books. Our filter for the books that we choose is meaningful books that entertain. So we are we do young adult, middle grade, and also adult fiction. And we're looking for books that people will enjoy, but that also have a depth of meaning, maybe make you think a little bit or question something that you thought you knew. So it could be any kind of book. It could be science fiction. It could be paranormal. Could be contemporary, but we're looking for something that's a little bit more, has more depth to it.
All right, Sarah, do you want to tell us what you do?
Sure. I'm an editor at St. Martin's Press. I am very lucky to work at St. Martin's because I can acquire whatever I want, which is not the case for a lot of editors, but I do get to acquire whatever I want. But I do focus primarily on young adult and also adult, but I probably publish about 80% young adult and 20% adult. And I look for classic books. I look for books that will become people's favorite books. So it's a tall order, but that's what I always keep my eye out for. I look for books that can become award winners, but also reach a broader audience. You know, I love finding books that will become people's favorite books. So that's me. I've lost everybody.
I see you.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, Lisa, what do you do?
Oh, sorry, did you say me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm an editor at Running Press Kids. I acquire everything from picture books to YA. And for our YA, we're a very voice-driven list. So we look for distinctive voices with stories that are accessible and have a broad reach.
All right, and Brian, can you tell us maybe a little bit about what you do, but also maybe what brought you into this conversation?
Well, I'm a school librarian and I'm a YA author. I am a straight white guy, and I've just been trying to make an effort not to only write about straight white guys.
Well, thank you all for joining us today, and we're going to start off as our teens have a long list of questions, so they're going to come up and ask.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Eric Carney, and I'm 15. What kinds of books in the YA genre does your publishing house publish?
I guess I'll take first. So I'm at Running Press. Hello.
Hi.
So for our YA books, we are not really specific to the genres that we publish within it. We publish sort of all categories. We have contemporary realistic, we have dystopian, we have at least some light fantasy. So it's a little different too. So there are only 2 editors at my house. So it's a little particular to what our tastes are more than what our house will acquire.
Okay.
I would say for Luminous that's true for us as well. We're a small publisher, so it's really what we like. We're not looking for a specific genre. We're looking for a book that catches our attention, that we think is important, that we think people will really be drawn to.
At St. Martin's, we are known probably the most for just publishing. Well, it used to be that we were known for publishing mass market adult books, but and our young adult program is still relatively young. So we've kind of published a broad range of things, a lot of big blockbuster best-selling trilogies, things like that, paranormal romances. But we've also done some award winners and smaller books too. So it really is, I think, as like the others, it depends on the editor. There are a lot of us there, and we sort of define our own list in a lot of ways. So for me, I tend to focus on, the sort of the more literary, I suppose you could say, the more literary young adult fiction.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Aruj. I'm 15 years old, and my question is, when you're publishing books and you picture the target demographic, what does your average reader look like to you? And this is for Brian or Mr. Ketcher as well. What does your average reader look like?
Well, I don't know that I picture what my average reader looks like. I've written several books that were aimed at teenagers, and yet a lot of adults really enjoyed them. I wrote a book about a transgender girl, and a lot of non-transgender people enjoyed them. When I try to write a book, I don't really think about, well, this is a book for so-and-so or such and such. I would like to basically write a book that anyone could enjoy. I don't really imagine I have a particular subset of people I like to read. I'd like everybody to read it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just asking, like, for your publishing house, what would your average demographic be?
For us, I mean, similar to Brian, I mean, we have our categories in that we have YA, so we, want it to be relevant to the teen audience. But we don't, for me personally, at least, I don't have a specific reader, whether it's like race or sex or anything. Like, it's anyone who wants a good story. And for me, sort of as an editor, I do want to make sure it's age appropriate to who we gear it towards. So like some of the content in our YA is not really appropriate for like 8 to 12-year-olds, right? So I'll make sure I keep an eye to that. But as far as sort of the typical makeup of that reader, I don't really keep that in mind, I guess, or have an idea.
I would have to agree with that. When we're publishing, we're looking for a book that we like and a book that we think is going to do well or maybe has an important message. But unless it's a paranormal romance, which girls would tend to like that more than boys, we don't really think in terms of what kind of reader we're wanting. A reader, we want our books to appeal to many kinds of readers.
I mean, for me, when I read to acquire books, I mean, a lot of this stuff is so subjective. For me, it's a lot of times if I'm not identifying with the characters or the story, then I don't like the book. So for me, I tend to identify with stories that reflect my life and the streets that I walk on and the way that I grew up, which was very diverse and was very complex and rich and full. So I can't help but just always have that filter in my mind when I'm acquiring books. So again, I'm not picturing an audience, I'm picturing what is kind of grabbing at me, and that tends to be you know, reflective of the way that I was brought up and the things that I've been reading my whole life, and the people that I'm around all the time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin and I'm 15. As someone in the writing and publishing field, what does a diverse book look like to you? And as we direct it at Lisa first.
Okay. A diverse book to me is, I don't know, that's a very hard question because diversity, you know, applies to a lot of things. It can apply to race, it can apply to sexuality, it applies to anyone. I don't know. I mean, I think more sort of about the goal of our list, a diverse list, is to reach people with different experiences and to make people not feel lonely. I think books always provide a comfort that you're not alone, and that can mean a lot of different things. So I wish I had this answer of what a diverse book looks to me, but because diversity is such a broad word that applies to so many things, and it means something that's broad, then it's hard to bring it back to sort of one specific thing. So I wish I had a better answer, but I'm sorry, I don't. Maybe Sarah can help.
Right. No, well, what I was going to say was that I always know when I'm reading a book that's not diverse, you know, when I'm reading something and I thought, my goodness, everybody in this book is rich and white. You know, certainly I come across that book a lot and I think, God, it stands out to me. I think it's when I don't notice it. I think it's when I know that when I'm reading something that's rich and well written and has three-dimensional characters of all different kinds, that I know that I'm reading a really rich and diverse book. It's like, you know, I think it's mostly something that stands out to me when it's not. Again, because I look for books that I think speak to my heart, and books that are about just rich white people don't speak to my heart. So, you know, it's a very complicated thing to answer, yeah, because like Lisa said, it encompasses so many different things. It really does, and I feel like as my job as an editor is to just find books that explore all different facets of life and all different corners of, and particularly a teen's life. So that's what I look for. That's that's what I'm thinking of when I'm reading a book. Is like, is this something that I would identify with, coming from my background and coming from what I know about people and what people like to read.
It's possible to overthink the issue as well. Sometimes you'll read a book and you think this author is just trying too hard to be diverse. I mean, when you're walking down the street, you don't think, how many white people do I see? How many black people do I see? What's everybody's religion? Who's gay? Who's straight? It's just, that's the world, and everybody's different. And when you're writing, it needs to reflect that. You can't be sitting there and think, I have to have X number of white, X number of black, X number of Asian, whatever. It's just, like was stated earlier, you can tell when it's not happening. You can tell when everybody's the same, or when they just throw in a minority character just to say, look at that, some of my best friends, you know. If you live a diverse life in real life, it comes through easily in your writing, I find.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hajra, and I'm 16. Do you think diverse books are necessary?
I can start with that. I think they're very necessary. And what came to mind when I was looking at this question was really for two reasons. One is because it's very important, I think, for young people or anyone to see themselves reflected in literature, to be able to have an example of their life and feel like they're included in the literature. And the other reason would be the flip side of that is to see someone else, someone different than you with a different experience. I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about reading, as we all know, is that it takes you to other cultures, to other countries, to to people who have different experiences from you, and it helps us gain compassion and understanding of that. So yes, diversity is tremendously important.
Exactly. I mean, you know, the literature should reflect our lives and the streets that we walk on, and you know, where our kids go to school. I mean, it should be all encompassing, and it's extremely important. Extremely important.
Yeah, I second that. I third that, as it were. I mean, to me, like, books' voices are all about being human, and human experience just has so many things, some of which, you know, we know about and experience, and some that we don't. And I think what I love about books is that you can always find that something, even if it's not your experience, particularly like the main, say, plot line or whatever, that you find the humanity that connects with you. So showing sort of all the different ways that that comes out in different people, I think, is an important thing.
It can be very off-putting to readers when every time they pick up a book, it's about somebody who's not like them. When I was a junior high librarian in a very, very rural district, one of my biggest complaints from patrons was not everyone lives in New York. Not everyone lives in a subdivision. I want to read books about kids who go hunting. I want to read books about kids who live on dirt roads, and I'm not seeing any of that. And I'm sure kids who live in other sorts of neighborhoods are tired of reading about people who are not like them. That's the good thing about literature. As was stated earlier, you can learn about different ways of life, different types of people.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sophia, I'm 13, and my question is, how do statistics for diversity in YA books published by your publishing house compare to the overall statistics presented here?
Well, what's you mean how does like St. Martin's Press compare to which other statistics are you saying? Are you just saying how many books do you feel we publish? Oh, yeah. Well, I can try and answer the question. You're talking to an editor who's not good with math. So as I mentioned before, St. Martin's we're not necessarily known for young adult publishing. We sort of publish a really broad range of books. So our young adult program is pretty small still. And I think, I mean, I didn't count up all the books, but my list certainly, I would say, is probably a good, I don't know, like breaking it down with like race and all that stuff, but I would say like my list, like 80% of my books to 90% of my books have a diverse cast of characters. In terms of other editors' lists, it may not be that high, but certainly for me, it's something that's very important to me. So a lot of my books have main characters who aren't just white, who have gay characters, transgender characters. It's not only that I'm looking for those things just to like fill a quota, it's that those things speak to my heart and I'm drawn to those types of books. So I don't know the exact number broken down for the entire house, but certainly for my list, I think it's pretty high. I'm pretty proud of myself.
I will also confess I did not do the math. I know these charts were provided very helpfully for us, but I just didn't have the chance to do the math either. Similar to Sarah, we have a pretty, select list. We only do about 6 to 8 YA per year, of which, again, like the cast of characters I know in the different books are certainly diverse. We definitely feature books, with, diverse main characters. So, do I know the breakdown? No, so I'm sorry I can't answer that question. I similarly feel pretty proud. I think we showcase definitely books like we have an undocumented immigrant, and so we I mean, as my own personal sort of acquiring, like I do look for these individual stories with different voices, with people from different backgrounds. So, and I know that we have that on the list. So I don't have the number, and I'm really sorry. But similar to Sarah, I do try to make sure that diversity is represented in that these characters are showing the world that they live in. You know, I always like ask questions to make sure that that happens. Whatever that world is different for every character. But you always just want to do sort of a, you know, discussion about that. So.
I did do the math, although my list is very small, I should say. So if you look at we have 9 books that we've published total for YA, and we do about 3 books to 4 books a year. And if you look at it in terms of race, only one of our books has a non-white character. But if you look at it in terms of diversity in general, we have some historical fiction. One is set in ancient Greece. One is set in the 12th century Germany. We have one where the boy is homeschooled and more fundamentalist religious background. So if you look at it that way, we're more like 45%. So we are looking for those books that have a little more to them. For us, part of it is, and the others didn't speak to this, we're very small. So people are still finding us for submissions. So a lot of it has to do with what we're getting in terms of submissions, and books of the quality that we're wanting to publish is part of the process for us.
Thank you. Hi. Again. So the goal of these statistics and the goal of our meeting today is to push for diversity in the YA genre, but not at the cost of quality. Do you think that is a feasible goal for the genre?
I think without diversity, you don't have any quality. So, I mean, it's a necessary ingredient for good fiction. Personally, what I would like to see more of is, you know, I think sometimes diverse books can kind of be lumped into a category of books that are good for you. What I would love to see more of are Hunger Game type books with main characters who reflect a more diverse range of race and sexuality. I think we need like a big blockbuster character in some ways too. Like it doesn't always have to be so issues driven. I mean, it would be lovely to see more commercial fiction with more diverse casts. I mean, and I think they do exist, but I don't think the main characters are necessarily quite there yet. So that's something that I think would be a goal to heighten the quality of the young adult literature in the market that's out there right now. But yes, diversity is an essential ingredient to good YA fiction. Without it, it would be bad.
Agreed, and I think it's important. Of course, we want more diversity. I think that's a large part of, you know, who is submitting and who's writing and who can tell their story. I feel like, you know, sometimes not every like a lot of cultures, it is not as open. It's not that like they'll tell their stories within their family, but they're maybe not so used to sharing that personal story with the broader public, which I think is changing just socially and culturally. So I think it's important, and I think we'll probably hear more as more people feel comfortable sharing that story and realizing that people want to hear it.
I would have to totally agree with that. A lot of it has to do with what authors are writing, and authors tend to write what they know. So you're looking at, you know, David Levithan, who writes a lot about the LGBTQ, or Amy Tan, who writes adult novels, but she's written a lot about her Chinese background. So the other author, Brian, here, he's written something that's outside of his own experience, which is sometimes hard for an author to do because you're writing a lot about what you internally feel when you're writing, and to try and inhabit another person's body, you want to be authentic. So to cross into that area, so I think what we're looking for is authors in those other cultures to come forward and tell us those stories.
When I'm writing a character who's different from me racially or sexually or whatnot, I always have this fear that either they're going to come across as a white guy with a coat of paint or as just the worst type of caricature. So there have been times I've been afraid to write a diverse book just because I this fear I'm going to get it wrong, and I cop out and make the character not especially interesting. It was very scary when I wrote Almost Perfect with a transgender character, and that took a lot of research, and I was still very afraid I was going to botch it up. So it can be very daunting, and it was mentioned earlier, I think by Lisa, it would really help out literature as we know it if we encouraged more people to become writers. You know, if you want books about a broad spectrum of people, we should have a broad spectrum of people writing those books.
And that same is true for reaching out to the publishing community too, to encourage more people to come and work in publishing, because, you know, to have more people with different backgrounds being the ones to edit books and acquire books, that also helps with diversity too. So
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Justin, and I'm 15 years old. And my question is, what trends or specific things do you think are popular in the young adult genre right now? And this pertains to everyone.
I can answer that question first if you want. I think currently right now there seems, I mean, I think in some ways the dystopian genre is still hanging in there, even though I think a lot of people in the publishing industry have sort of maybe gotten a little bit tired of it. But certainly, you know, like the Veronica Roth books are still very popular, and also fantasy. And then on my end, the contemporary realistic fiction genre, if you want to call it that, is having a, you know, a renaissance. I mean, it's always been a type of young adult fiction that has been written back to Judy Blume, but I think with the success of Fault in Our Stars, we're having a lot more books like that going and getting on the bestseller list and getting a lot more attention. So I see personally, from my perspective, a huge push towards contemporary realistic fiction, and that encompasses a lot of different kind of stories. So that's what I've noticed.
I agree. Contemporary realistic, definitely with all the Fault in Our Stars and the John Green. It's in the ether. People are talking about it a lot, and then people are like, oh, if you read that, you want to read this. So some other books are getting more exposure, I think, to that broader audience who maybe hadn't read that much YA before. Fantasy, that always has a good audience. It's having a good time, and you know, that's always been popular in different ways. I mean, for like adults, you have like Game of Thrones, and how many people are picking up those huge, long, you know, novels. And you know, YA certainly has a fair amount of fantasy that's doing well right now. So there's that, and yeah, we see a lot of dystopian in the editor side and in the acquisitions, and maybe we're a little, you know, more wary of taking it on. But that being said, that the new, you know, Hunger Games movie is coming out, and how many people watched that trailer, and how many people are going to see that movie? So there's still some room with that.
I would totally agree that the contemporary fiction is coming on strong, and will continue to be popular. I think sci-fi is maybe on the low end, but that was sort of talked about last year, and I think it's still a possibility. The LGBTQ is continued. It's been there already, but it's continuing to be a very popular genre, or at least having those types of characters in the books. And I would say for paranormal, the trend has been to move away from the werewolves and vampires and more just kind of a psychic type of mind abilities with characters. So I would hope, I'm hoping that the dystopian will end. I'm wanting something where we have a hopeful future, where it's not that we've screwed everything up, but that we did something good.
Justin, when I was your age, there was no real YA books. What books were marketed to teenagers were very sweetness and light or very, very preachy. You kind of just went from the chapter books straight onto adult fiction, and I think it's wonderful that now people are realizing young people want to read books, and they want to read books about things that actually happen, a serious issue, and just what it's like to be a teenager. And I think it's wonderful. We're seeing this renaissance of YA literature, and I'm sorry I was unable to experience that when, man, back in my day.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Lauren McGrath. I'm 18, and my question is, we've noticed young adult books seem to have fallen into a specific pattern. There are trilogies with amazing first books, filler second books, and mediocre third books. Do you think the genre is becoming predictable?
I wonder
I mean, you talk about a genre, but you're just basically saying trilogies, which covers a wide, which isn't really, so you're saying that more or less that YA is falling in a habit of having a lot of trilogies, and you don't like how the trilogies are turning out. So the main question: do I feel that genre is becoming predictable? I guess the answer is no. I mean, I think because again, like trilogies isn't a genre, so I think there are some really great, strong trilogies out there. To say that they become predictable, it's not that the stories themselves are predictable. It's that I think sometimes the arc of how the movement of the bigger story can happen. But I guess at base I don't really agree with the argument that the trilogies as a nature and as a whole of like all trilogies are going badly. But so I guess I don't know the answer to that.
It's okay.
Someone else can chime in.
I try and avoid trilogies, to be honest. I guess I sort of agree with you, and then I don't. I mean, I think sometimes what happens is when a book does really, really well, they publish the second one too soon, and the writer doesn't have a chance to really build the story. I think there's a lot of pressure on writers to pump them out really quickly. So maybe for other writers who aren't under that kind of pressure, you have more time to really develop your stories better. I think, though, since I'm a contemporary realistic person, I think that, it depends. I mean, just like with anything, there's certain movies that are always predictable, and then you find those really good ones. So it just really depends. I'm sure you could pick a few books off of the bestseller list and say, oh man, I totally saw that coming. But then there's other ones that will surprise you too. So, and I think both serve a function. I actually don't mind books that are a little predictable. I like to be mindlessly entertained at times. But I also like a really good book too. I'm okay with that sometimes. I mean, books are always gonna hit various points on the market, what people are looking for. Some people want those books that you just tear through on the beach in one day, and you're looking for the happy ending,
Yeah, I mean, I have someone else take that the trilogies. It tends to be a lot of like good versus evil is your basic thing of this trilogy, right? And that for the most part, I usually want the good to triumph at the end. So in a way, it is predictable, So I don't know.
I would have to agree that part of the reason for it is possibly that they're trying to get the next book out so fast that there isn't a lot of time for the author to spend developing the plot and making it more interesting. And I would also agree with Sarah that sometimes people just want that next book because they liked the first one and they want it to be predictable and it feels good and comforting. Is that the best thing? No, not necessarily, but that is sort of the nature of the trilogy. It is like Lisa was saying, that's the kind of book that it is.
Am I allowed to ask more? Brian, do you want
to ask more if you have something?
The one time I was actually once asked to write a trilogy, and they paid me in advance, and I failed so hard. So, forget it. We'll eat the money. This isn't happening. So I have to sympathize with anyone who can put out a trilogy, even if the third book is not as good, because I couldn't even get through book one.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, so I'm Anjum. I'm 15, and my question is, I've noticed that like often the main character and their love interest sort of fall into a mold, as does their relationship. And so I was wondering, do you feel that romance is like as relevant to real teenagers' lives as YA teenagers are? Sorry if that didn't make sense.
It did.
Okay, good.
You know, I would say that it's the same is true with the romance genre for adults, is that when you're reading a romance, you know, people are looking for sometimes the typical, you know, boy meets girl, a boy falls in love. There is that pattern, so that people, you know, then there's some kind of breakup and then they get back together again. So that a lot of the romance books are written with that kind of pattern, and it's too bad because it's not really true of the way things happen in the real world. And I don't think that you know, the romance that's portrayed in the books is as intense as it is in real life. I mean, it's not as intense in real life as it's portrayed in these books, and people are having these magical kisses and magical relationships, and it's not real. So I like that you're asking this question, because I think it points out that, you know, some of these things we're aspiring to situations in romance that are not portrayed as they are in the real world.
Okay.
And was your question if we thought that the romance in the novels are as important to you as the reader as they are to the characters themselves?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, do you think it's as relevant to teenagers in real life as it is to like the characters in YA books?
I don't know. You're going to have to tell me. I'm dying to know. Because for me, I mean, I love romance. I love a good story. And I mean, I don't like the cookie cutter romance stories. I like them to have complications. I like to feel honestly like maybe this isn't going to work out. I like two characters falling in love that don't often get to fall in love in in other books. So, you know, for me, it is important because I think maybe in some ways, because I'm an editor who likes to edit young adult books, in a way I'm sort of living a new teenage life, you know, through these characters. But I don't know, if teens don't like to read romance, then I'm in trouble.
I know that some people like romance, but then like personally, I really don't like romance. I'm not very good with romance. I'm sorry.
No, it's fun. I'm glad to know.
I just don't get love, and then I open a YA book, and it's just like
all love.
I hate to tell you, you're not going to get love much more when you're older either.
Okay.
It's going to be kind of confusing, just different ways. But that being said, it's also hard. So I guess part of it's hard to answer because it depends on how you see YA characters as having how important love is to YA characters. So if you see it as this overwhelming thing where it's the only thing in their life, I wouldn't agree. I don't think that. But then I don't think that necessarily what I read a lot or what I acquire portrays the romance as like this is all that this one character can think of. I think it's often a part of all these other things that go on and what make a good romance read. And similar to Sarah, like I'm a romance reader. Like I grew up reading Nora Roberts. Like I love the romance. And I'm not a particularly romantic person in real life. But like I think not necessarily romance, but love is important in life. And a lot of people, having a partner and having someone to share things is important. So whether or not it's important to teens, I don't know. I'm no longer a teen. I can't answer that, but I think humans find love important, and teens are human. So I'm assuming that it has a place in their life in some way, but I could honestly be totally wrong, in which case I am also in trouble with the books that I acquire. So.
Okay.
When I first tried to become a writer, I thought, what do I want to write about? They always say, write what you know. And I thought, what do I know about? What am I an expert at? And then I thought, I know what it's like to be a teenage guy and not be able to get a date. And I turned that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Minty, and this is my question. Do you find that comparing a newly released book to a bestseller such as Harry Potter boosts sales?
I can answer this from my perspective. We're a small publisher, and we work with a distributor that is separate from us, that has a sales force that calls on independent booksellers. And when we're coming out with a new title, they do not want us to compare it to a bestseller like a Harry Potter or Hunger Games, because that's too easy. Everyone wants it to be the next bestseller, but that's not necessarily what it is. So they're wanting us to find other kinds of books that are maybe not that the John Green or whatever. It's a kind of a copycat sort of thing. I mean, you do see a lot of books being published that after those books come out that are almost identical to them. And do they sell? Yes. I mean, people are looking for more of that, but it's not always helpful from a reader's standpoint to have the books compared to big bestsellers like that, because they're not really the same type of book usually.
Yeah, I'm the same. If I'm launching a book to my company, if I make unrealistic comparisons, that's not good. I have to find books that it's, realistically about it. Comparing something to Harry Potter, it's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah. Agreed. I agree with Sarah. And sometimes I put comps and I will get called out of it being realistic. I think also most people try not to, like most of us who are having to make these comps. No, I mean, it's the series, it's more than just it being, this book about a boy who becomes a wizard. Like, it's this huge, massive series with a certain way that this was put out into the world. And, if that's not the plan for your book, it's not a good comp, not just necessarily on the sales and it being a bestseller, but just sort of helpful knowing for how you want to put your book into the world, you comp it to something else that was put into the world in a similar way. That can be helpful.
It can be off-putting when you look at a book cover and they compare it to another book and you think, oh, it's a Harry Potter ripoff. Oh, it's a Fault in Our Stars knockoff. Oh, they're trying to get on the dystopia bandwagon. If a book is good, it can generally stand on its own merits.
Thank you.
Hi, it's me again. My question is, so do you feel that it is necessary to compare a new book to a bestseller, even if the new book is very loosely related to the bestseller?
My quick answer would be no. I mean, I don't comp all of my books to bestsellers. I mean, I hope they become bestsellers. I think they have the quality to become that. But again, I comp them to things that are, I don't know, that I think are comparable. And I also think that a bestseller is, again, not necessarily give it the label of quality. I think quality comes in different forms, and they don't all become bestsellers. So.
Quite often, I mean, not always the case, because I think what Tracy said is true too, that sometimes books that are very similar to what's already out there do well because the market is hungry for more dystopian or whatever, but quite often books will be a surprise hit because they're different. because they've broken the mold and people were ready for something new. So I think by not comparing things to other things that are sort of a reach is a good idea. I think you have to be creative in finding your comps, and sometimes it's a little mix and match. Sometimes it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it's important to be realistic about it.
I think that it sounds to me from hearing Lisa and Sarah and Brian talk, all of us are looking to write special books or to publish special books. So we don't necessarily want them to be, this is the next Harry Potter, this is the next Hunger Games. Would we like them to do as well? Of course, but that's not what we're looking for. And like Sarah said, often those books that did so well is because there was never a Harry Potter beforehand or a Hunger Games. They broke the mold.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess like the final question before question and answer session is, what do you think that the future of the YA genre holds?
I don't know. I don't know. I think I hope for personally, just because I love contemporary realistic, I would love for the young adult market to, in some ways, I don't know if anybody will agree with me, in some ways I kind of wish the categorization of YA would disappear without losing any of the YA books, because sometimes I think that just even sometimes the category of YA really limits things. But that's coming from somebody who, I tend to publish a lot of the older crossover books that could be read by adults and young adults as well, so I'm definitely the sort of 17, 18, 19 reader. And sometimes I feel a bit hamstrung by the YA category, because I want young adults to come to my books and I want adults to come to my books, and I would like the parameters to loosen up a little bit. Sometimes I think the category can be a little restricting.
Well, what I was going to say really dovetail exactly with what Sarah said, is that the new thing that's being talked about now is this new adult category, which is from 18 to 28 or even 30. And again, it's looked at two ways. Is it the age of the protagonist, so someone who's older than the YA group, and also what that age group would like to read. So that's an emerging area.
I don't know. It's funny when the question of what do I think it holds, I think sort of in a different direction. I think about different things. I think more than category, I think for me, I'm very excited for what it holds. I mean, as Brian was saying, YA now is different than YA, completely different than YA when I was growing up, which may not look like it because I know I look young, but I'm a little older than that. And so it's just a different field, and I just can't, and then it's going to be different 10 years from now, and I think just as culture and social and all these political issues just change and swarm and affect the stories that people have, as well as the curiosity people have for other stories, of which social media and certainly all of that has helped fuel. I think good things in that just there will be different stories to be told and more voices who do it. So I'm excited for sort of what it has to hold big picture.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Peggy and I work here at Blue Valley, and before we open it up for questions and answers, I wanted to know if any of you had any questions for any of our teens here today. No questions for the teens?
Well, I would love to know what people are reading. Sorry, Brian, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're fine.
What you guys are reading? Anybody want to come up? Mm-hmm. What you're reading?
Okay.
Or ask.
I know personally, like, I'm more of a fantasy person, so lately I've just gotten into a bunch of fantasy series, and they're all trilogies, so I'm just kind of annoyed with that. But I really like them. And today we actually got the galley for one of my favorite series, the Throne of Glass series. So we got the galley for the last book, which is really great. So there's that. Thank you.
Good. No, thank you.
Yeah. I would be curious, what kind of covers have you guys been drawn to lately? That's another thing I'd be curious about.
Okay.
Oh, but go ahead. Finish on, like what your reading question. Go for it. Go for it.
So they made, they spelled out YAC, which is our group, the Young Adult Advisory Council, all in books, covers of diverse books, and I'm going to try to not make you motion sick and yet pick up the computer and show it to you. I gotta make sure these cords come with me. And Mismatch, and the Fire Horse Girl, and when we have Pull, Hot Girl by Dream Jordan, DJ Rising, When I Was the Greatest is up here, Rose Under Fire, Fake ID, so you can see some of them. And I took a picture of this and I'll email it to you so you can see all the favorite covers here. Good job, guys. Make sure I didn't unplug anything. Are there any other questions for these before they have a long list of questions again for you as well?
I have a question. So I'd like to know what do they consider a diverse book? What would be something that would fall in that category for them?
This is a hard question to answer, but personally, I consider a diverse book a lot kind of, I guess, what you guys consider. Just not all the same cookie cutter characters, like you're straight, you're white, you're rich, and so is everyone else. But mostly what I look for in diversity is not just anything that's not straight and white. Anything that's like, I guess one of the things that I've always found a really funny concept was like take all of the majority people out. Just I don't know, because from what I've seen, a lot of people seem to group together. Like, I have all gay friends. I don't have straight friends that much. And so, like, having that one token gay character is good because diversity is needed, representation is needed, even if it's that one token character who's kind of really stereotypical. But even so much better than that is to just have a whole cast. Like, Orange is the New Black. Orange is the New Black is really what I consider to be a diverse cast. I mean, you can obviously have all white characters or straight characters or whatever, but why would you want to? But that's the point! Okay, I'll just...
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have some more definitions here.
Need inspiration, watch Netflix.
Yeah!
Hi, I'm Essen. I am 15. When I think of diversity, I don't look towards diversity in a single book because I don't just read a single book. I like to think of diversity all across the board, all across the landscape because I read a lot of books, and from what I'm seeing, I'm not seeing a whole bunch of like diverse genres. I'm seeing a bunch of token diverse books, like they're very singular, and that's sort of the problem I have with that. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, it's me again. Okay, so for me, diversity, like I've been reading since I was like super little. Like I was one of those like super smart kids that read like at age 3. But like as I read, like I'm growing up in a really white neighborhood. Like we look really diverse here, but you know we chose these people. This is all fake. I'm just kidding. But like I grew up in a really white neighborhood, and I'm like a small brown girl, and I'm reading all these books, and all of these little kids are white, and I grew up like and on TV too. like all of these kids are white, and I'm like, am I like the only one here? Like, where are my people? You know? So, and then as I got into YA, I keep seeing like authors kind of like, to us, like we don't know what the publisher or the author is thinking. We're just reading the book. Like we see it at face value. So I'll be reading a book, and all of these minority characters are like cookie cutter, like black people or brown people or like gay or transgender people. And it's like really unfair because I don't want to be portrayed that way as like a minority. So I think people think that when you write a diverse book, like all of the characters have to be like all these different colors. But that's not the way people want it. Like we just want like a secondary brown character that isn't a stereotype, and like that's all. Nobody's asking for like a lot of main characters who are brown or black or Hispanic. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, like honestly, when I see Indian characters written, they're always like they are stereotypical. Like they seem to be very Indian, and honestly, like most of my Indian friends don't know like the first thing about Indian culture. We know like the basics of like, or like, sorry, I'm not very eloquent. Like I remember one time we were doing this thing where like we discussed different cultures, and someone else got assigned to India, and he said something about like how all Indian people hate cows or something, or like worship, yeah, how all Indian people worship cows, and I'm just sitting here like, what? Because I mean, first of all, that's a Hinduism thing, and there's like, Hinduism is most definitely not the only religion in India, and like whenever you see Indian characters, they're like always Hindu, and they're like always highly mystical, whereas it's just like that's not how Indian people or like racial people work in real life. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. Okay, so we're starting on the question and answer part. My name's Caroline and I'm 16, and my question is, do you feel it's harder to market a book where it would be really successful if it's more diverse?
I will start. I say no. Again, it's so hard, but I mean, I've definitely been to other houses, but especially for our small house, you know, which is different because we just got bought by a big publisher. But, you know, traditionally sort of having a certain thing, like a special interest that we can bring out, which maybe isn't necessarily what the book is about, but that can just be another added selling point in a way where I can be like for one of my books, we had a bisexual main character, but it wasn't a conflict. Like that wasn't the thing he was dealing with. So it was a dystopian, so that was the main story, right? But for me, like as a selling point and something that our sales staff liked, because there's been a call for more books with diverse characters, where whatever like that thing that labels them as diverse, perhaps, isn't a conflict. Like there's been a call for that, just to have them be like normal characters and have that thing. Then for me, that was a selling point that helped. So for me to have anything that speaks to it, or we had like a story about an undocumented immigrant who's a high school senior. This is something that a lot of people are dealing with. Immigrant issues are definitely in the news right now. So for us, you know, that was involved with the diversity in the book, and that was something that honestly a lot of people talk about. So for us, it was helpful, but I can't speak to everyone.
Certainly, I mean, I think I agree with one of the points that Lisa made, which is that the diversity does not make a book less commercial. It's actually just the plot. You know, sort of the positioning of the book. So as I was saying earlier, I think quite often books that can get kind of lumped into, like the diverse books can get kind of lumped into like the issues-driven books, the ones that are more sort of driven towards library awards, the ones that are more sort of driven towards, you know, books that you will read in school, as opposed to these big commercial blockbuster bestsellers. So it really depends on the plot. So I personally think that I would be so thrilled to launch a book like The Hunger Games or like Divergent with a diverse cast of main characters. I think that would be so much fun. So really, it's just about the conceit of the novel. It's not so much about the characters' physical makeup or who they choose to love. So, I mean, I have a book that's sold very well that's been on the bestseller list with a main character, a non-white main character. So, it's not that it's harder to make commercially successful. I think it just depends on what the book is about.
Yeah, we have a book, for instance, that's about a questioning teen. It's coming out in spring, and he is bisexual, and that's part of the issue, but it's a very dark book, and that's more of the concern for marketing it, is that it's so dark, not so much his questioning, which is, it's shining a light on a difficult subject. So it's the diversity or the question in that case is not what's going to create the issue in marketing it, it's the darkness of the plot.
All right, thank you.
Thank you guys for your time today. It's 1 o'clock, and we've had such a wonderful discussion. We wanted you to see all of the teams that are here today, so I'm going to get out of the way, and they're going to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be in touch. I'll send you the video, and I think they might have a couple extra questions for you that you might answer by email at your availability. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, thank you.